Let's talk about one of the greatest rescue missions in music history. It's a story about how one 20-year-old genius set out to save the work of another who had been almost completely forgotten.
I mean, can you even imagine a piece of music that people consider one of the greatest ever written, just gone? It's a pretty terrifying thought, right? Well, it almost happened. We came incredibly close to losing a masterpiece forever. So just get your head around this timeline. After J.S. Bach died in 1750, musical tastes just changed. People wanted something new, something more elegant, like Mozart. Bach's complex, dense music suddenly seemed really old-fashioned. And so for nearly 80 years, that's basically a whole lifetime, his incredible St. Matthew Passion just sat there, gathering dust, completely unheard by the public, until one night in 1829.
Now, to be fair, Bach wasn't a total unknown. Real music buffs and expert musicians, they knew his keyboard works. But his huge, epic works, the ones that are really his towering legacy, they were silent. Nobody was hearing them.
And we're not talking about some obscure little piece here. The St. Matthew Passion is, it's often called one of the absolute supreme achievements of all of Western art. So the stakes for its survival, they were about as high as they get. So who's the hero of our story? Who steps into this void to save this sleeping masterpiece? Well, it's a young champion, a prodigy, who had this deep, almost fated connection to Bach.
And here he is, Felix Mendelssohn. And get this, in 1829, he's only 20 years old, but this kid is about to kick off a musical revolution that's going to echo for centuries.
You know, Mendelssohn was basically the perfect person for this mission. It's like his whole life led up to this moment. His great-aunt, she was a huge collector of Bach's original manuscripts. His sister, Fanny, an incredible pianist who played Bach all the time. And his teacher, Carl Friedrich Selter, well, he just happened to be the director of the choir they needed for the revival. The whole quest really began when he was just 14. His grandmother gave him a hand-copied score of the Passion, and as he started studying it, this crazy, audacious plan began to form in his head. But, this plan was not going to be easy at all. Most people thought the piece was way too long, way too complicated, and just way too old for the public. And his biggest obstacle was actually his own teacher. So when Mendelssohn and his friend went to their teacher, Zelter, with this big idea, this is what he said to them. You can just feel the skepticism dripping from that quote, right? But somehow, against the odds, they actually won him over and got the choir and the concert hall they needed. But that skepticism wasn't just his teacher being grumpy. It was kind of how everyone felt. Mendelssohn knew he couldn't just perform the full 3-hour original for a 19th century audience. To save the masterpiece, he realized he was going to have to perform some pretty serious musical surgery. And he was not gentle about it. A modern assessment of what he did puts it bluntly, by the time he was done, there was less than half of the original music left. He made massive changes. So let's break down just how drastic this was. He slashed the length from 3 hours down to 2. He took out 10 arias and 6 chorales, just gone, to keep the story moving. And he totally updated the sound, swapping old Baroque instruments for modern ones like clarinets, and using this massive amateur choir of 158 singers, which was way bigger than anything Bach would have used. So the stage was set. And this was not just going to be another concert. This one performance was about to completely change the course of music history. No exaggeration. Okay, so try to picture the scene. It's March 11th, 1829. The concert hall is absolutely packed. The King of Prussia is there, the philosopher Hegel, the poet Heine. Everybody who was anybody in Berlin was in that room, waiting to hear this music that a 20-year-old had dug up. And by all accounts, it was an electrifying success. Mendelssohn's own sister, Fanny, who was singing in the choir, she just captured the magic of it all perfectly. Her 20-year-old brother had pulled it off. The news spread like wildfire. When the great writer Goethe heard about it, he came up with this incredible poetic response. It tells you everything, doesn't it? This wasn't just a concert. It was a cultural earthquake, the sound of a forgotten world roaring back to life. The impact was just immediate and permanent. The concert created this public sensation, which led to a massive reappraisal of Bach all across Europe. Suddenly, famous composers like Schumann and Brahms are studying his work, and then in 1850, the Bach Gesellschaft is founded with one goal: publish a complete edition of everything Bach ever wrote to make sure it could never be forgotten again. So this all leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. Mendelssohn had to radically change Bach's masterpiece to save it. Without that bold and, controversial choice, the original might have been lost to history forever. So what do you think? Is a reimagined masterpiece better than a forgotten one?